Okay, so welcome to part 3 of these videos on modeling single living unit, project 4a, and then making an axon. And we're finally at the point now where we're ready to make our drawing. So we have a 3D model of our living unit, outdoor space, and a little bit of furniture to help add some description to how the spaces are meant to be used. So in this video, we're going to walk through how to make this sort of X-ray axon. So if I refer back to my assignment sheet here really quick, a couple things to keep in mind. One of them is going to be all the drawing elements that we need to include, and how we need to kind of emphasize things. So we're going to do something like this image you see up above, and we're also going to make sure we're exporting to scale. We're going to choose a scale, and then we're also going to choose an axonometric angle. So the first step to complete is to choose an axonometric angle. So first of all, in order to choose an axonometric angle, you want to make sure that you're not in perspective. So perspective is not axon. You can do two things. You can do isometric, and you can choose any one of those views. Once you're in those views, you can right-click and drag, or use the orbit button to move around. So you don't need to be in a perfect isometric, like a 120-degree angle or whatever. You can also, if you're just in top view, like I did in the first tutorial, hold Control Shift, right click, and drag your mouse button, and we can shift our view into like a 3D, and that's the same thing as an axonometric. It's a paraline view of our model, but kind of in 3D. So what we want to do is, and I'm in wireframe view right now, my display mode. So I'm going to kind of choose an angle here that's going to, I think, show my whole house as well as I can. And a couple things I'm thinking about. One of them is I want to be able to see clearly that relationship between the outdoor and the indoor living spaces. I want to see clearly what's going on inside. And this house, this unit obviously has 2 levels, so I'll talk a little bit about how to handle that. And then I also want to see, I'm just kind of looking, because we're going to do this X-ray thing, for anything that's going to be like a weird, kind of confusing overlap. So I'm just kind of looking for an angle where we're having less stuff kind of overlap. I think that might be kind of nice right there. And of course, the other thing you can do is you can kind of move your furniture around in order to make it work a little bit easier. Like, for example, maybe I want to move this thing over to the side. In any case, once I have an axonometric angle that I'm set on, and of course we can always go back and adjust it later and reproduce the lines if we find out it's not working the way we want. But once I have an angle that I'm set on, I want to save that angle, because I'm going to produce multiple line drawings from this view, and I want to be able to go back to it if I ever need to update anything. So in order to save a view, I'm going to go to Named View. In the command line, that should bring up this panel right here. And in with that viewport that I have my angle set up in, like set as active, I'm going to choose Save As. And I'll call this my axon. And I'll click OK. And so now, no matter what I do, I can always double click on that, and it'll bring me back to that angle. Now, the next thing I want to do is make my line drawings. And because we're making this X-ray style drawing, I'm actually going to do it in a couple of different. I'm going to do a couple different Make 2Ds, and then I'm going to kind of compose the layers in Illustrator. I think that's going to be a lot easier than trying to do a Make 2D with hidden lines and then composing everything. So one thing, the first thing that I want to do a Make 2D of is going to be basically the structure, like all the kind of substance of the building. So all I'm going to do in order to make that drawing, I'm going to turn off my window frames, I'm going to turn off my furniture, and I think basically kind of turn off anything that might distract us from understanding, the walls, floors, and roof of the building. I think, okay, maybe I'll turn my stairs off. I'm not sure yet how we should handle that, but anyway, so I'm gonna do a make 2D just like this to start off with. So I'll select everything. I'm gonna type in make 2D. So two options I want to select here, actually three options. First of all, I want to make sure that I have maintain source layers selected. I'm going to make my life a lot easier with line weights. I am going to turn on hidden lines. I'm also going to turn on scene silhouette because we're doing an axon. It might be useful. Actually, in this drawing, we're not going to probably do a scene silhouette. Sorry. So turn scene silhouette off on the layer where you're just showing the substance, and I'll click OK. And I'll wait a couple seconds, and obviously I'll go over to my top view here. So obviously when I make a 2D, it should show up near the origin of your file, the 0, point of your file. It should also be automatically selected. So if you don't see it right away, just type in zoom and then hit that option selected. It'll take you right there. And I should also see in my layers panel a bunch of new layers having been created. And those, again, correspond to the layers that all my existing geometry is on, my 3D geometry, and all the both the visible and hidden lines for those layers. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my other viewport here. And the next thing that I want to do in Make 2D of is going to be just, I think I'm going to do just the windows, maybe the stair. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my roof. I'm going to turn off second, my second story floor. I'm going to turn off my exterior wall, second story wall or interior wall, and courtyard wall. So I have just my floors, and I'm also going to turn on my windows and doors. And actually, you know what? I just realized I should have a door at the entrance to the courtyard. So I'm going to model that really quick here. Okay, so there's my extra door there. And I guess the other thing I want to do here is really quick make sure that I have a window everywhere where there's a cutout. So like some of these in this building anyway don't have kind of the traditional window frame. They have like a cast in place kind of window frame. I'm just going to add some window frames there so that we kind of recognize those as windows really quick. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and do our Make 2D. Oops. So yeah, when you do something like that, just go back to your name view, double click. I want my walls to be, my wall to be off too, by the way. Okay, cool. So go ahead and select everything. And I'm keeping that layer of the floor turned on. And I'm going to go Make 2D. And this time I am going to use that option, Scene Silhouette. So I'm going to turn that on. And I'm going to turn the option Hidden Lines off. I want to represent these as something that's really important in my drawing, is where all the windows and doors are, how they're laid out. So I want to make sure I have a profile line to help show that. And I also want to make sure that I'm showing them in a clearer way. So I don't want to have a ton of hidden lines that are kind of messing up my view. And then the final thing I want to do here is a similar Make 2D, except that I'm going to show furniture and casework. This is where it gets a little bit tricky if you have a second story. I'm going to do this guy. I'm going to turn these off for the time being. Click hide. And I'm going to do a Make 2D of just the first floor. And I got to throw my stair in. I haven't done that yet. Okay, so I'm going to do a Make 2D just of that. Okay, cool. Those are the layers, those are the basic layers that you'll need, I think. So one that has all the windows and doors, one that has all the walls and floors, and then one that has all the furniture. And that's what we're going to go ahead and take out into Illustrator and compose. What I'm going to do next really quick is I'm going to show you what to do or how to try and deal with like if you have a second floor. I'm going to turn those layers back on. I think the best way to kind of handle this would be so like in our turn off gradient view. In our current drawing with the walls and floors, you can see that we have the second story floor in place there, and we also have the window cutouts and everything like that. I mean, we can just delete these lines later if we need to, but so I might go ahead and want to delete those lines, the second story wall and drop ceiling. I think we do want to acknowledge that there's a second story, but we're going to do like a separate drawing as if it were exploded, show what's going on with that second story. Anyway, so we'll potentially go back and remove some of the information in this drawing while we're in Illustrator. But if you have a design where the second floor is totally independent, so it's not like a loft space, kind of like what I have here, then you're going to want to follow this technique probably for the whole drawing, what I'm about to show you. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to cut my model, but rather than actually cut my model, I'm going to do something called clipping. So I'm going to type in the command line clipping plane. And I'm going to put it about at the bottom of my floor. I can still adjust it once I place it, but I'm just going to draw it at the bottom of my floor. Okay. I'm going to move it out of the way there. I'm just going to put a layer here. On that layer. Okay. So if I go into shaded mode, you can see what this clipping plane is doing is it's drawing basically, or it's showing me like a live kind of plan cut of my 3D model. And so wherever I place this thing in my scene, that's where my model is going to get cut. Now, the other thing about this is the rotation. It's an object, so if I'm cutting in the other direction, I can rotate that plane. And you can see it's got a little line sticking out. That's the direction that it's going to show stuff in. And everything behind that, it's going to clip stuff. So what I want to do is basically clip my model so I'm only looking at the second floor. And like I mentioned, if you have a design where you have two totally independent floors, you probably want to just go ahead and make make a drawing like this, where you're just showing the first floor, and then make a separate drawing where you're just showing the second floor and kind of show them as exploded. Now, let me explain what we're going to do here to do my loft space. So also with a clipping plane, so if I go into my other viewport here, you can see my model is not clipped. So a clipping plane can be turned on and off in independent viewports. So right now it's on in this viewport, off in this viewport. You might even find that when you reset to named view, you can see it overrode my clipping plane. In order to turn it on or off in a particular viewport, I just select that clipping plane, go to Properties, go to the clipping plane button at the top, and then I can turn it on and off in different viewports just by checking that little box there. So I'm going to turn it on in the Axon view. The other thing I can do in this little dialog here is click this button up at the top where it says flip direction. And of course you can also just like rotate it 180 degrees, either way works. But that way I can flip in the opposite direction. And so what I'm doing there is I'm showing just the second floor of my building. And basically I'm going to go through the same set of steps with the same set of drawings. You can't see my other layers here. Hold on. So I'm going to go make the same set of drawings, 3 layers for just my top floor. I'm going to draw the walls and floors. I'm going to draw the doors and windows, and I'm going to draw the all the furniture. So a couple things to do there. Let's turn my stairs off and my roof on. Make sure I'm in the right angle there. My view clipping plane back on. Okay, so I'm going to make 2D with hidden lines without scene silhouettes. Click OK. And I'm going to place that guy. Try to deselect my clipping plane so I don't mess up where it's placed, because that'll change it. You know, like that'll make my lines. My drawing is not all the same. I'm going to turn off my exterior walls, my roof. I'm going to turn on my windows and doors. And I'm just going to do the ones that I can see here. Oh, turn off my second floor wall there. And make sure I'm in the right view. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to make 2D that stuff. This time I want to turn off hidden lines and turn on scene silhouette. I did before. And I'll just move that out of the way. And finally, I'm going to make my furniture. Where is that layer? Oh, so I have it hidden. I can just type show, or I can type show selected. And I'll just grab the stuff that's on the second floor. All right, same thing, make 2D. And same thing as before, no hidden lines. We actually don't need scene silhouette, but you can keep it if you want it, up to you. It might help your furniture be a little bit more, look a little bit cleaner and stuff. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to do. And if you had a design where you had two totally independent floors, I would recommend you do the same thing for the bottom floor. So you just clip it where the ceiling is, basically, and just show the bottom floor, and then just show the top floor independent. And so what I'm going to do, I think I'm ready now. I'm going to go ahead and export to Adobe Illustrator. There are two things that can happen, and I mentioned this in our Project 3 tutorials. I want to make sure my drawings are close to the origin of my file, because that's going to affect where they show up in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to just turn that on so it starts loading real quick. But I'm going to select all my lines, make sure I'm in top view, and I'm going to type or go to File and choose Export Selected. And I'll go to where my video is, and I'm going to, under Save As Type, I'm going to choose Adobe Illustrator. And under File Name, I'll just call this my export. I'll name it properly when I get to that step. And I'll go ahead and click Save. And I should get this dialog that appears that asks me what scale I want to use. I'm going to try and see if 1/4 inch equals a foot. Now, one thing to be mindful of is I have a file where I modeled in inches, right? So this would be 4 inches equals an inch. That's going to be pretty big. So I want this to be 1/4 inch on my page equals 12 inches in my model. I'm going to go ahead and change that. Just a quick reminder that you can't type fractions in these boxes. Rhino will not know what to do. Everything else looks great, so I'll go ahead and click OK. And then I should have a new Adobe Illustrator file, and I will go ahead and open it over here in Illustrator. Right, and then if I zoom out, now let's see, where's my drawings? So this can happen for one of two reasons. Either when I exported it, I made it way too big, or it's not close enough to the origin. Let me try one more time. I guess you can't type that in. Export selected. Let's try and just overwrite. I'm going to close this so I can overwrite it. Okay. So I think what probably happened is I switched these two. So I need this to be, this box on the right is the size that I want it to be on the page, and this is what it is in my model. So the box on the left is like full scale random space, 1 foot or 12 inches equals on my page 1/4 of an inch, or 0.25. I'll go ahead and click OK, and I'll open that guy up. And then when I zoom out, you can see there they are. So yeah, so just remember when you export to Illustrator, oops, wrong file, that you want to put the model space units on the left and the paper space or whatever your page is, your scale is in Illustrator on the right. That was a mistake I made, and so it was too big. Anyway, so that's a pretty good scale, but we also want to double check that it's going to work first by choosing the correct paper size. So I can hit Control R and to bring up the ruler. And we can see my paper size is 24 by 36 at the moment, so I need to change it. I can go to Document Setup up at the top, or I can go to File, Document Setup, same thing. Click Edit Artboards. And then up at the top, I'll see width and height of my paper space. I'm going to do actually portrait. So I'm going to go 11, 17. Okay, and then I'll just click on the selection tool to exit. Now let me just see real quick. Let me just test. So I think a lot of you guys will be able to get away, depending on your unit design and everything, with doing 1/4 of an inch. Obviously, that's not going to work for me because I have this second floor to show as well. So rather than re-exporting, I'm just going to scale everything that I have here in my file right now. And I'll do that by going Control A in order to select everything. I can also go to Select up at the top and click All. Same thing. Right-click anywhere on the canvas. Go to Transform. And go to Scale. Now, remember, we're not scaling to something like we're not setting it to a particular scale through this dialog. We're just changing it relative to what it is. In other words, if I have a model that's 1/4 of an inch, or drawing that's 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, and I want it to be 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to scale it by 50%. The other thing I want to make sure I do, if I've already started doing line weights and things like that, this option down below where it says, I can also click preview just to make sure I'm doing it right. But anyway, so that would be 1/8 inch. We may want to go to 3/8, but we'll see. The other thing I want to be mindful of is if I've already started to scale or to do line weights and stuff like that. So this option down here, this checkbox where it says scale, strokes, and effects, will scale down your line weights if you have it checked. So just be mindful of that. Like I want to leave it off probably. Okay. And now I think we're about ready to start laying this thing out. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to make everything one color and everything one line weight. So to bring up the layers panel in Illustrator, if you don't have it, go to Window and go to Layers. In order to select stuff on a layer, what you can do is you can click the little circle on the right-hand side of that layer, and I'm holding Shift right now to select everything. I can also hold Control A or do Control A to select everything. So first I'm going to set everything to one line weight, and then and I did that in the stroke panel, and then over in the color panel, I'll choose the stroke rather than the fill, make sure it's in front, and I'll apply black to it. So everything should be black now. Okay, and then I'm basically just going to go through my layers one thing at a time. I have quite a few layers here, so I could have cleaned this up a little bit while I was still in Rhino if I wanted to, but anyway, so I'm going to go through my layers one step at a time, and I'm going to start with this middle drawing, the walls and everything like that. I'm just going to move these down so I can see everything at the same time. Okay, cool. And let's see. So if I select this layer, oops. If I select this layer, what am I getting? Those are my floors, hidden. So the number one thing to do here is going to be, with these drawings, is going to be to make the interior envelope kind of the most prominent. And so if you remember way back when we started modeling, we modeled the walls, and I can just show you this in Rhino really quick. But we modeled the walls. Layers back on and off the cooking plane. We modeled the walls as going a little bit deeper than the slab and the floor, basically. So that's what those lines are doing right there. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select all the lines that form kind of like this interior volume, and I'm going to make them more prominent. And a lot of what you'll do, I think, on this step is going to be just to kind of clean up the drawing and delete any lines that you don't want. So let's start with that. Let's start with those lines. And I might just make a new layer here, and I'm going to make all those lines on that same layer. And I'm going to call this my interior envelope. Okay. And in order to change what layer an object is on, you just drag it. So like, you do the same thing for up here. If I select this line and this line, select all the interior ones, see how it highlights a little gray, or whatever color the layer is, it'll highlight a little square at the right-hand side. I just drag that to what layer I want it to be on. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make those, I'm going to select them by selecting that layer, the little circle at the end, and I'm going to make them not dashed. And we'll just make sure we get everything here. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete a bunch of lines that I don't want. So anything that's kind of, so I'm looking at the exterior profile. So I'm going to delete that edge and that edge, delete that edge. And that exterior profile is going to be a much lighter line weight, because I want it to be kind of less prominent, right? So I'm line weighting more. I'm thinking about my graphics more at this point in terms of, I'm making a new layer here, emphasizing certain things. Rather than sort of following the conventions that we would normally use with a axonometric drawing. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck dash, and I'm going to make that 0.25. So I want that interior envelope to be my most prominent. Make sure I'm not doing any dashes. Get that little line there. That one too, I guess. And if you do want to edit lines, it's not recommended to draw in Illustrator, but I mean, you can do it. And some people are really, really good at it. But if you want to edit lines, there's a couple ways you can do it now. I can just scale them. And when I do that, if it's a straight line, meaning horizontal or vertical, it might move it. So like this, I can edit to what I want it to be just by scaling it in that dimension. I can also edit it by editing like the anchor, what's called the anchor points. Basically, those are the control points. And if I go to, so there's two selection tools. There's direct select and there's just regular select, I guess. If I go to direct select and I click on an object, you can see it highlights the little, what are called anchor points. And I can click those and move them around independently. So I can change the line to whatever I want it to be. And I also, by the way, have under View, Smart Guides turned on, and that's what's showing the, like when I move that point, for example, and I snap it to kind of where the end of that other line is, that's what's making it show that I'm actually on that line. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is just delete these lines here. We don't really need them, and they're really already starting to confuse my drawing. So those walls and punch outs on the second floor. I am going to leave the floor because I think that's really important to show, but that's going to be a lighter line. We'll deal with that in a second. And we'll also find, I think, let me clean up my exterior wall here. And I'm going to kind of do a similar thing. So I'm going to delete lines that are below. I'm going to delete lines that I can't see, or I shouldn't see. So those kind of lines. And then I'm choosing lines that are going to emphasize, again, the kind of interior volume, that space. And I'm less interested in the exterior volume. And so I'm just removing lines that I don't need. And I do want this edge to go all the way down. Okay. That line should go. I'm going to keep that because it's a cutout for a door. That line needs to go. Two lines here, that's confusing. I'll get rid of one. Okay, so same thing like before, I'm going to select all the walls, all the lines that represent my, what I'm calling my interior envelope. And I'll just put them on the same layer. Okay. So those should also be on this layer. Oh, and by the way, so real quick, when I did that, so I moved these lines to that same layer. And if I want to just quickly match the same appearance as the lines that are already on that layer, which I know these ones are, rather than selecting the whole layer again and changing, I can use what's called the Eyedropper Tool, which is over here. You can get to it by hitting I on the keyboard. And then I'll just select a line that has the appearance that I want to match. And it'll pick up that appearance, just like that. Okay, cool. Okay, so on and on, just like that. I'm going to do the same thing to this drawing. And then I'll come back when it's kind of cleaned up, and we'll talk about how to deal with cutouts. Okay, so I'm finished cleaning up the interior and exterior envelopes, and you can see right away that sort of edges are looking a lot clearer, I think. I'm going to go ahead and throw that on my interior as well. Okay, cool. That's kind of what we want to do. We want to have this lighter outline, which is the exterior, and then, no lines in between or not too much detail there. And then these heavier lines that are kind of the interior volume or the interior space. I did the same thing with my kind of courtyard wall down here. And actually these lines should also be, in fact, maybe I'll just go ahead and get rid of them. Cool, yeah. And then what I want to do is go ahead and, oops. Okay, then what I want to do is go ahead and start dealing with these window punch outs and interior walls. So I'm going to call this stuff, maybe I'll do that first. These are my interior walls. And I think they should be on a layer. Can I call that? Let's just go ahead and interior walls. I'm also going to go ahead and So my drop ceiling is in there. I'm going to put those lines, actually, that should actually be my interior envelope since that space has a lower ceiling. Guessing you guys won't really be dealing with anything like that, but let's just go ahead and delete that drop ceiling. Imagine it's not there because I don't think you guys need to deal with that right now. Okay, so interior wall is going to be on a separate layer. And I'm going to treat these lines down here exactly the same because I want them to kind of be visible as a partition in the space, but not to really kind of overwhelm what's going on. So I'm going to throw all those in the same layer real quick again, and then I'm gonna make those a dashed line. Well, yeah, I'm gonna make those a dashed line. Or so when I want to change a dash line, I can go in here to my stroke panel. Again, if you don't see this option dash line, try double clicking where it says stroke, because you'll see different options. That's true of all panels, depending on how expanded it is. So I'm gonna try like a tighter dash. I think that makes it read a little more like a cohesive line. And I'm also gonna make it a lighter line weight. Okay, that's the line there. That's not very. And I think that actually doesn't read that great. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try it as not a dash line. I'm gonna try it just as a solid, kind of lighter line weight. And I'm just cleaning this stuff up as I see it. But anyway, so okay, that's gonna work fine. Let's go ahead and leave that for right now. And then the next thing I want to do is deal with these window punch outs, which are going to be on two different layers. One of them is hidden exterior wall, because technically that's a line that's part of the exterior wall. And then one of them will be on our visible exterior wall, which is just those guys right there. So first thing, I'll just throw those on the same layer. Hidden exterior wall. I'm going to call this my window punch outs. And let's just move both of these layers up so I can organized. Okay. I'll select all those at the same time. And this is something I'm going to make a lighter line weight now. Or sorry, I'm going to make it a dashed line. So I'm going to try 2 again. There's a couple things that know when you do a dashed line. So when I select that window punch out layer, and I have it set to 2 point and 2 point, which is the dash in the space. The other thing that you can see in this panel is there's the difference between a butt cap, a round cap, and a projecting cap. And so the little butt cap will give us like square ends to the little dashes. And it'll also make the line appear a little bit shorter rather than the projecting cap, which will go all the way around the kind of anchor point of the line. Anyway, just something to kind of keep in mind. I'm actually going to try a little bit tighter of a line right there because I like that to be a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to make them light too. You want those to read as kind of punch outs, but not be super prominent because they are going to be they're also going to be filled with the actual windows, which we drew like the frames of, if you remember that. Okay, so that should bring us right around to that step, actually, where we're going to throw in our windows and doors. Now, if you remember, we actually also... Oh, I guess I missed this one real quick. But if you remember, we also added... or do I need... we also added, when we drew our windows and door frames, the option to create a silhouette. So over here in visible, we should also see a couple layers that say scene silhouette. One of the reasons we have so many lines. So if I select that layer, you can see it's doing a pretty good job of creating the silhouettes of those individual frames. And maybe if I go through real quick here, I'm gonna select all this stuff at the same time and make it a lighter line right there real quick. And so that way we can see, if we go to Scene Silhouette, Curves, and select the windows, Scene Silhouettes for our windows, and crank those up, we can start to see where that thicker line is going to show up. So one of the things that you will see is the interior, because we didn't model any like glass or any surface on the interior of those, is going to also show up thicker, like that line right there, basically. But I don't want that. I just want there to be a thicker line around the outside of it. I'm going to go ahead and put some of these back on a lighter layer. And so why don't we go ahead and do that right now? Oh, and actually, you know what? There's a duplicate. There's a duplicate line there. So I'm going to undo what I just did. So if we turn off, so there's two layers we're dealing with right now. The Scene Silhouette windows. Move these both up. I've got my window frames. And I've got my window, oops. Why does that keep happening? Window silhouette. Okay. And so if I turn off that layer, you'll see I can just go in and delete all these lines. That's the easiest way to do this. Because those lines are basically duplicated, right? So if I turn the window frames back on, you can see we're just left with the exterior silhouettes. So I will do the same for kind of everything. Oops. Just delete all that stuff. Okay. Okay, cool. And we can always adjust it a little more later if we need to. Okay. So that looks pretty good, really. The only thing I need to do now is line it up with my existing drawing. And the way I'm going to do that is that's why I also made 2D the floor when I went and did that. This one does look a little messy here real quick. Yep. So we don't need any of those lines. We really just need, and we know everything's at the same scale. Oops. Why is that not going away from me? Oh, it's just a glitch in my display. Okay, so all we really need are like these two lines that are going to show us where that corner is. So now I'm going to go ahead and throw that in with the rest of my drawing, as long as I'm satisfied that it's line weighted properly. And I'm going to throw this on that interior envelope layer just before I even do that. So I'm going to mess that up. Okay. This is where the line weights will start to get, the layering will start to get pretty important, just so we don't have like a ton of extraneous lines and stuff like that. Okay, cool. I did forget this window punch out, but maybe that's kind of fine because it appears that it's already being shown on another layer. It's just, oh, one other thing you can do that's really helpful. So if I hold Alt on the keyboard, click where the little eyeball is, I can turn everything else off except for that layer. So like I'm trying to match the visibility or the display of this line to everything else on its layer, and I'm having trouble clicking on the right line. It also highlights pretty clearly for us that we got some lines we don't want. And then to go back to where we were, we just go ahead and alt-click it again. Hold Alt on the keyboard and click on it again. Okay, and then the only other issue I think is that we kind of missed the silhouettes for these guys because I think they were in front of the floor basically. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the windows and doors, and then I'll return once I have that stuff put together. Okay, and so now we have the walls, floors, and windows and doors all composed. And you can see we have, kind of the interior volumes emphasized as a heavier line weight. We have the openings emphasized with our profile lines on the windows and doors. And we still have those punch outs registered with the dash lines and everything. And the final layer is going to be to add our furniture in. And this one, it's going to be up to you kind of how you want to work it. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm just going to use that line at the corner to show, like I don't need the rest of this stuff, but that's how I'm going to line it up with the plan basically. Oh, and I did forget to mention that one thing I talked about in video 2 was like adding detail with these drawings at this stage. So, one thing you could do if you wanted to, for example, I talked about, well, maybe you want to add detail like there's like drawers and stuff like that in the kitchen cabinets, which then I would do that in the drawing basically. So once I've done my Make 2D already, then maybe I'm back in here and I'm adding a couple of extra details that indicate, that there's doors or drawers or something like that. Again, something really simple, just like that. Just a single line is more than sufficient. Just delete a line there. So something like that will make it really nice and clean. And you could do the similar thing in just in Illustrator if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to start with, where's my furniture? Okay. I'm going to delete some of these other lines that I know I'm not going to carry into my drawing real quick. I guess I still had silhouettes turned on. And if you remember in, is that going to be my whole stair? Okay, that's kind of okay though. But if you remember in the tutorial where I remodeled the stairs, I talked about how sometimes you don't want to give thickness to everything because it's just going to turn up as a double line like this, right? Because those lines are so thick, or the line weights are so large or heavy or whatever, at this scale we don't even register, we don't even see the difference between them. So anyway, that's one thing that's just useful to keep in mind as you're drawing, is like what can you really see at the scale. Why is that not? Display keeps messing up. One way to like try and look at this that's a little easier if you're finding like there's too much stuff overlapping and it's hard to see. If you go to view, if you hit Control Y on the keyboard, which I don't know what that, it's GPU preview, I guess. Basically what that is it shows you just the vectors without any fill or stroke applied to it. So these are the actual lines themselves, right? If I toggle that Control Y, you can see that that's the vectors with the with my line weights applied, right? Anyway, so that's sometimes just useful for like cleaning stuff up. Like these didn't get really very nicely composed, unfortunately. So we could clean up some of that stuff really quick in here. Anyway, Sometimes it's easier to just copy. Oops. Happened. Oh, my display keeps. Yep. I could just copy that line. Rather than make a new one every single time. Anyway, so maybe I'll clean that up here in a second. So first of all, I'm just going to make everything one line weight. Furniture, maybe we'll start with something lighter. And again, I don't need these floors or walls. Those lines shouldn't be there. Okay, cool. And actually, this is open, so I should be seeing that. Right. So, worry about that. Just need kind of like one edge to line everything up to. Okay, cool. And I think we also did a silhouette on our, oops, I messed up there, on our furniture when we made 2D. So we could try and see if that's something that looks good or not. So down here we have furniture and casework. That's all on a specific layer. Cool, that's great. We have the stairs on a separate layer. And then I think we have one that's also for our scene silhouette. Where am I looking for? Furniture and casework, there it is. Oh, so we only got the stuff that wasn't in front of the. Okay, so let's just delete that layer. Okay, cool. I'll throw these on my interior envelope real quick. Clean up my existing drawing. Okay. And then I'm going to drag it over. That to line it up. Cool. And actually, I guess, should have kept my stair on. Maybe in that one, or at least part of it. So I could see where I'm going with that guy. And then I'm going to clean up some of these lines that they're kind of showing as behind the bookcase, just because this is a weird ledge in the building, in the way that this building is built. Okay, cool. Now the other thing I wanted to mention really quick with the furniture is another technique that you can use that you might find helpful. Because we're starting to see like things behind walls and in front of walls, we're starting to see objects through furniture and so on and so forth. Let's see, furniture and casework. If I isolate that layer, let's say I wanted to add like a white semi-transparent fill to that layer. I can select all those lines. I can go Shift and hold Alt on the keyboard to make a copy. And then I am going to actually separately, because I don't want them to become one paint group, I'm going to live paint this as just white. I'm choosing white as the fill. I'm setting nothing as the stroke. And when you live paint stuff, you can actually just click a bunch of times. And I'll just show it to you in black so you can see. If I click like a bunch of times in one space, it should fill everything that it can. Of course, I want it to do white, so there we go. Okay, now it's filled, and I can go ahead and clear the stroke. And we have, I'll do it real quick on this guy. Clear the stroke, okay. By the way, that's also helpful. If you hit Control Y, you can see that stuff. But anyway, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to throw these on their own layer, so that's easier. I'm going to call this my furniture. Transparency. And I want the lines for the furniture to be above that, and I also want them to be above a lot of the stuff in the rest of my drawing. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and turn everything else back on. Yep, good. Okay, so now you can see it's showing like in front of some things. So I need to kind of fuss with the layers a little bit to get it to look right. So for example, my interior wall would be in front, and in some cases, my window silhouette. Okay, cool. And I'll let you kind of mess with other things like that. But that'll allow you to kind of build some layering visually. And I can also select it and turn down the opacity, so it's not sort of interrupting as much, but things are still visible through it. Okay, cool. So I think we're in pretty good shape here with these drawings. The last thing I would want to add, if I did do something exploded like this, obviously would kind of be, I would want to add a dash line showing that line, oops, next to that line, and I think these are actually not, sorry, let me just delete that real quick. Or sorry, let me just line this up really quick is what I meant to say. These aren't actually lined up, they should have been. Very cool. And I want that to be a dash line. And I want it to be a little bit heavier of a dash line. Maybe something like that. All right, like bigger dashes is what I meant by that. I actually want it to be a lighter line. That's not. Cool. And I'll just copy that. We don't need to do a ton of dash lines, but we do need to just have enough to indicate that this is kind of like exploded off of that. Why did that? There we go. Okay, cool. So that kind of indicates that like the stair leads up to the second story living space. And then I guess one thing that I also kind of forgot to do was have the, on the wrong way, have the a little bit of furniture or something like that to indicate that the exterior is kind of also living space. And I could do maybe like a kind of silhouette tree or something if I wanted to indicate that there are natural boundaries or natural shade elements or anything like that. Okay, and so that's pretty much our drawing. The only thing left to do is going to be to add our labels. I'll make a new layer. I'll just call this my titles and labels. Two things that I need to do. One of them is going to be, most important is going to be my scale, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get the line tool. And rather than clicking and dragging to draw a line, I'm just going to click. And what that enables me to do is enter specific dimensions. So if I know, that an inch on my page is going to be, I guess, 8 feet now, since I scaled, I'm going to enter a length of, what is that drawn a vertical line? Maybe it's just not previewing for me. I'm gonna try that. Okay, so I'm gonna enter. I'm gonna enter 1 inch. Okay, cool. What I like to do that's really easy is just make up the line weight quite a bit. Make sure the cap is set to butt. But you can do this however you want. But you know. Oops. And then I'll just. You can also move stuff around with the arrow keys. You guys may know. I'm just doing that, right? And if I wanted to make this double, well, I guess I'd just make a copy. That's the easiest. And then to add text, I can click and drag, and I'm just going to write, so 8 feet, 0 inches. Obviously, this is 16. And obviously this, and 32, or whatever your scale may be. Now, I also want to mention, so mine's pretty small on the page. If I were to mess with my scale a little bit, and let's say I wanted to do like 3/8 of an inch equals a foot, or I'm sorry, 3/16 of an inch equals a foot, rather than 1/8 of an inch. So 3/16 of an inch is, you know, 50% bigger, or 1.5 times the size of this. So I can select everything, right click, transform, scale, and I'm going to type in 150. And let's see. That looks great for one thing. I'm just going to click OK and kind of see. My line weights still look pretty good, but if I wanted to scale up my line weights at the same time, let's say that was I could do scale strokes and effects. And that way it would make everything proportionally, all my line weights and everything proportionally bigger than they were before. And this is obviously way too big now. But I could just do scale down my font size. Oops, quite that much. Scale down my stroke. And just move those lines around like so. Yeah, we might want to do a smaller scale at that point, but anyway. So I'm going to move this up on the page. Looks great. Yeah, this is too big. So I would do transform, scale. I'm going to go 50%. All right, I want to turn off those scale strokes and effects. 50%. Okay, great. And then I could do the same. So that would be 8 feet. 4. That's obviously 0. And that's 16. Did I line that up right? Cool. Good stuff. Okay. So maybe I'll throw that like over here where there's a little more room. Oopsie. Kind of center everything. Okay, and then obviously I also want to add my name somewhere on the page. want to add the class. And I might write P4a. Use a nice simple font. Okay, and then finally I could indicate why is this messing me up? Okay, I can make a key. Call this living. Net outdoor living. Leave that off to the side. All right, and then just add little numbers. You can also do, let's do 1. Two. Five. Okay, and then I'm ready to, I'm done with my drawing. So last step is to, obviously I want to save it for myself. And I also then need to export it to PDF, which is the file type that that you're required to submit. So in order to export, I can go actually we need to print. Can't export to PDF in Illustrator, we just need to print to PDF. Okay, and we'll just choose Adobe PDF. And then where it says media size, we'll go to custom. And that should automatically pick up, whatever orientation. Try that again. There we go. It does it in portrait. Anyway, you can also just re-enter the numbers if you want. Okay, make sure we have down here, we have it set to do not scale. And then under output, we could set our printer resolution to 600. If the file is really huge, we could turn it down a little bit. This is mostly vector artwork, so it's not gonna flatten our image. But anyway, so we'll click print, and it should bring up a new dialog. Here, R241. And there we have it. And that's the file that you'll go ahead and submit. And that's going to wrap up this series of tutorials. I will sign off.